Hey, welcome back, Knicks fans. We're here to talk about today's game. The Knicks played the Suns, and today was another doozy, especially on the offensive end. Um, they're struggling. It's they're 8-8. The wheels haven't totally fallen off yet, but they're definitely struggling. I'm here with Jersey Dre, and so we're going to talk about today's game, and also we're going to talk about things that's happened the last few games. It's been like over a week since we dropped the video, so we'll talk about today and also kind of how things are looking for the whole season. So Dre, what do you think? What do you think of today's game?
Um, I think we were out of sync again. I felt like watching today's game, like we have no direction. We have, no leadership, no clearly defined leadership. I thought Jalen Brunson played well. I thought he was the bright spot. I also thought Quentin Grimes came back, and I thought he gave pretty good minutes as well, as he's still getting his legs, up underneath himself. And so it was still just very disappointing at the end of the day. I'm feeling that there's going to be a major shakeup soon. So as we keep watching these games, I feel like, looking at, just the body language, I understand that the team has been written with a lot of sickness. So it's kind of hard to, throw the daggers that I want to throw. But, at the end of the day, if you're not feeling well, you need to sit down and you need to let the coach know. And even if you're not in a headspace to even say, hey, you know what, take me out, the coach needs to be aware. And it just seems like this coach will, he'll play you, no matter how you feel. So, and here's the results. So what did you think about the game? What did you think there, Sybil?
Yeah, it's the same thing. I kind of feel the same way with in terms of I don't want to hear about sickness from any I know they talk about it, like the Nick commentators talk about it and kind of reference mostly to RJ. I know Randall also said he wasn't feeling game. I think it was like on the Nuggets game, the one he kind of like balled out. And so, but I'm with you. If you're sick and you can't go, you need to sit down, especially RJ, the way he's playing. If you're sick, and you feel like you being sick is affecting your game, you're affecting the whole team. You're like RJ is clearly a drag on the team at the moment this whole year. And if it's because of the sickness, then he needs to sit down. If not, then they need to be quiet about him not feeling well. Stop making excuses for him. If he's out there playing, then he needs to ball. Right now, he's not really playing on either end, right? The defensive effort has been sporadic. Sometimes it's very sporadic at best, but a lot of times he just doesn't make the effort. Funny enough, with RJ, I was listening to another show, and one of the callers on one of the other shows said like he looked a little heavier this year, like heavier, like in terms of like he might be a little out of shape. And it's true. I kind of noticed he does seem a little heavier. So now it got me thinking like, is he out of shape? It's and that's the thing with everybody used to always say about RJ last year, and I used to say it last year, like everyone say RJ is like this hard worker and everything, but if he was that much of a hard worker, his shot would not be that terrible. So I'm not sure what people are talking about. If he was really that hard working and putting up as many shots as people are making it seem like he's putting up, he wouldn't be breaking as many shots like he does. He'll be a lot more confident, So at least the great ones, they're usually there in the gym and they make what do they like people like Melo and Michael Jordan? What do? They stay in the gym until they make like 500 or some crazy nonsense like that. Uh, you know, So if you're nowhere near that, then you can't tell me you're putting in the work to be considered to one day to be an all-star. But that's it. That's pretty much it with RJ. With Quentin Grimes, the one thing I did like about him playing today was I did like he was a little aggressive, putting up his shots because production was the issue last year. And so not only did he put up some shots, but he also made a lot of plays. He had 8 assists. And so he wasn't shy. He's being a little more aggressive this year. And so if he's going to be aggressive like this, we're going to have to wait and see what it means in terms of his shot, his the points he's going to be able to put on the table. But he's definitely making some good basketball plays, and so I did like a lot of the minutes he gave us. But still, it's like everyone on our team seems to be extremely inconsistent right now. So you kind of have to wait to see, look over the next like 6 to 10 games to see what Grimes gives you, because everyone is really. But overall, as a team, I knew they were gonna like. I knew what they were doing the last few games where it wasn't really gonna be that sustainable because there's only three of the only RJ, Brunson, and Randall are basically really trying to take command of the offense. It's almost like they're not allowing anybody else on the team to really play when they're on the floor. Everyone else just needs to stand around, and if they get the ball, they need to shoot it. And to make the right basketball play by like passing the ball, then they're not going to get the ball back. It's almost like only RJ, Randall, and Brunson are the only ones that are basically that are like allowed to take the shot or allowed to even like go off the dribble and stuff like that. So it's like that's just really what it feels like, and it just doesn't feel like they don't feel like a very good basketball team. And honestly, sometimes when I'm watching, I'm like in a throw the baby out with the bathwater mood. Sometimes like throw all of them out, because it's like it feels like there's nothing really good on this team right now, because of the way they're playing, how inconsistent they can be. But obviously, you can't be like that because I shouldn't feel like that because it's. I think honestly, I'm starting to think like everyone in this team at best is a role player. That's really the vibe I'm starting to get now. Honestly, even with Obi, because it's like he needs to be a lot more aggressive if he wants to be considered like even like a good basketball player in this league. I mean, you can't just like let them turn you into a 3-point shooter and that's it. And so you're telling me if you don't take a three, you're not going to do anything else on the offense. To me, that's bananas. So it's just all of it is just really bad right now, the way it looks.
Oh, I agree. What do you think is the root cause of this poor performance offensively? Do you think it's not the correct play calls? Do you feel like like even some of these shots, like even with Obi Toppin, he's missed layups.
Oh yeah, he's missing layups. Yep, and dunks. You're right.
Yeah, this is unprecedented to see this type of effort, and so they're head scratches. So what do you think is the cause?
I think it always starts with the coach because it's a young team. A lot of the people I'm concerned about are young players, and I'm not seeing enough out of them. Well, I kind of think it starts with the coach, and because he sets the tone and the style that the team needs to play with. The coach is the one who needs to look at this team and be like, okay, this is how we're going to play basketball because this is like what gives us the best chance to win. And the coach feels like the best chance for them to win basketball games is by running the offense through the two most inefficient players that they have on this team, which is Julius Randle and RJ Barrett. And there's a lot of games, although Jalen Brunson today took quite a bit of shot and had a better command of the offense. But I think that was only because the RJ's and Julius's confidence is starting to wane now because, what are we like almost 20 games into the season and they're RJ shooting like below 40, but what is he like 35% of the season and dropping. And yes, I think he was at like 45% the last time I checked. He might be down to like 43 now, maybe, and is dropping probably. So, but I think that's the problem. This coach keeps trying to run. He thinks the best option, the best chance they have at being successful is by running the offense basically predominantly through RJ and through Julius. And it's just not. That's just not a good recipe. They're wildly inconsistent. And then the basketball IQ, honestly, on both of them is just not very good. We know Julius is not very good. RJ, it kind of surprises me. I've always felt he was tunnel vision a lot of times, but can make good plays for his teammates at times as well. but now he's just really starting to look like a really low IQ basketball player. There was one specific play where it was a fast break, basically. I can't remember who let the ball out to Obi. Obi is going up the sidelines, right? Could have went to the basket. It was basically a fast break, but he saw RJ in the corner. They were both right there on the wing. It probably the best thing probably for been better for Obi to kind of go down the middle. But the fact that he was going down the sideline was fine, right? And RJ was also on the same side. RJ stays in the corner, right? And so basically the man commits to Obi, and then Obi basically dumps the ball to RJ. But the smart basketball player was for RJ, instead of taking that 3-point shot, he's not making any. Act like you're going to take it and dump it down to Obi, who's basically has the free lane to the basket, and Obi can just get an easy dunk. But RJ doesn't do that. RJ takes a 3-point shot, although he's like, what is he, like 1 of 24 or some crazy nonsense like that from three. And so it just plays like that has been really, it's just been really bad, and it's been extremely disappointing. And so just not sure. I'm just not sure, like I don't know. I'm just not sure, like, what to say about it. But it's pretty much the coach, and it's because of the way he wants to run the offense, and who he wants to run it to, who he sees as the priority. And so I think that's what the issue is. What about you? What do you see as the issue with the offense?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry, I had to switch over. So I think there's a combination of things. I feel like Tibbs he's not offensive minded, and our defense sucks. And so there are a lot of missed opportunities. Like I said, RJ is playing very selfish. Like it seems like it's him, like he's a one-man army on this team. Like it's not getting other people involved. I mean, as soon as the ball touches his hands, most likely he's shooting the ball. Doesn't matter where he's at. He's just become very, very selfish.
Yep.
We had that trouble with Cam Reddish initially, but once he kind of got into the flow of the offense, especially on the offensive side, he wasn't. He became more involved with the game flow. And I just feel like RJ right now, I don't know if this is a Duke mentality, is what they teach you down there in Duke, but it's definitely not conducive of where the Knicks should be going. And I think, it's another indication that Tibbs is losing the locker room. They're just, they had that, players team meeting or whatever, over this span, but it still looks like we're still just a step behind, and we just don't have any true leadership. We don't have anybody who's rallying the troops, after each play, like, hey, pointing out, okay, this is what you should be doing. We don't have that true floor general. And so this is truly who we are. I mean, I'm glad we were able to win those first 2 games on the road, but this is technically who we are.
Agreed.
We're a 500 team at best, on a good day. But on most days, what you see is what you get. Again, the statistics don't lie, right? This is exactly who we are. And it's how unfortunate it is. Something's going to have to give soon. We're getting close to 20 games in the season. They look at it. Was it every 10 games? Is that how they're judged per 10 games? So
statistically, it's 20 games because you need, I think you need a 20-game sample size to do a statistical analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's coming. It should be coming up once they hit 20 games. Figure if they need to make decisions, they should be making decisions. Definitely, that analytics group, they're probably going to be, they're going to be hitting them up with a bunch of reports and analysis. At least the front office and also the coaching staff. So, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I agree, it's possible they're going to have to make some changes. You would imagine, right? So either honestly, they don't want to be. From what I'm seeing, normally I am the kind of guy who prefers for the team to compete. Um, but at this point, I really don't want to see them competing with like Julius Randle. I really don't. Um, I think they need to trade Julius Randle. Unfortunately, I feel bad for Derrick Rose, but they got to talk to him to see if he wants to stay or if he wants to go. I don't mind as long as Derrick Rose's minutes doesn't like approach over 20 minutes, because at that point you're risking injury for him. I think he got hurt today actually. Um, but with Derrick Rose, he just they may have to consider trading him and figure out where his head is at. But I think they need to just full on switch to developing these youths, and including maybe trying to keep working on RJ, focus on RJ. The focus, I think at this point, it needs to be a little more on him. And although for me, like I feel like RJ more than any player on the squad in the last 10 years, he's like the first player since God knows when that's actually um, that they've actually really invested time and energy into, and it's although they haven't always put a great team around him, but at some point, this is year 4, you're gonna have to figure some things out on your own, because he is out of the last 10 years, even probably more than that. He's like the first player we've drafted where we've actually really committed playing time to and training time to and all season effort time to. And right now it's not looking very good. And so they're just gonna have to make a change. It looks like they're just gonna have to make a change and like really focus on these young guys and hopefully try to see if you can salvage RJ, because it's not looking good. Right now, I'm actually hitting that button right now because this is year 4 and the dude is shooting 35% and he doesn't look he here. No, it's like it's time to hit that panic button and really try to they need to focus more, um, kind of salvage that. And then also Obi as well, because Obi is not looking very good. You can't be having these top 10 picks and then like not basically developing them the way they should. The one thing I like about Tibbs in the offseason is like he kind of puts in the requirement that you put in the work, right? And so that's a good thing that, he normally asks these young players to put in the work in the offseason. But clearly, in terms of I'm just not seeing enough out of them. And they need to just change coaches and just trade Randall and some of these older players and just focus on these young guys. Maybe try to get in the lottery, because the way we're going, and we're not doing anything. Like we're basically stuck in the mud at this point. And so they need to just switch it up, you know.
No, I
But
agree.
what do you
Yeah.
think about where do they have to go? What do you think they should do from? I mean, it's really early in the season, and there's so many phases to the season. All we know, they could make a run, and then all of a sudden they're like a 5th seed or 6th seed. But
Yeah.
what do you think? What are you seeing, and what do you think the front office should do at this point?
I would sit tight. I would sit tight until we get closer to the trade deadline.
Yeah,
I think we need to get a good look. Now, one thing about RJ, and you'll hear a lot of, different now, analysts will say, RJ starts these seasons, the season's off very slow. And once the All-Star game gets here, he picks up and he hits a switch. And, if that's the case, what does that say about him?
I know. Yeah,
What does that say? I mean, you are a 4th-year player. You should be taking that next leap, and you've been paid accordingly. You've been
yeah,
compensated, and so to, to basically, I guess, take off. I mean, to not really play or play hard. I mean, I don't know. I just think he's playing very, very selfish. He's starting to believe that he's truly the Maple Mamba. You know,
yeah,
to be a Mamba, you gotta earn it. It's
yeah,
not given; it's earned. You know.
yeah. I agree
And
with
you
you on that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think you know, he's known for playing with a chip on his shoulder. He's always felt like he's been snubbed or he's been underrated and he has. And he has. It's because he's not showing up. There's no consistency.
Mhm.
It's like Jekyll and Hyde. Which one will he be? I just don't know. And it's time that we hold Julius's feet to the fire. It's time that we hold RJ's feet to the fire just as much. Um, I can't even blame that on Tibbs, to be honest.
Yeah.
RJ's downside. He's just playing selfishly, but Tibbs has the capability of keeping him in the game and not. And I understand right now with Cam Reddish being hurt, he's going to this 9-man rotation and he's taking Fournier out of it completely. But I don't know statistically have we gotten better since we removed Evan Fournier.
I haven't looked
I don't
at it
know.
from that standpoint, but no, not really. They're like, or the last few games since Fournier has gotten out, like our defensive rating is still not that great. I think um, actually it might be better with him out of the lineup. It might be a little better. I shouldn't say that. I need to check to see. But in terms of RJ, I mean, it's his defense, like them taking Fournier out doesn't really, for me, it maybe helps a little bit, but it's marginally because the big problem is RJ and Julius. They don't play defense, they're not playing defense. It's RJ's defense is sporadic at best. Once you might get a few possessions where he's going to put out some effort, but most of the time, just like he gets beat backdoor, he's like a daisical, loses his man. Sometimes even like he plays terrible help defense. It's almost like he's basically running through mud sometimes, and it's like, what is going on? And so I really do think because I kind of saw it last year. I kept talking about it in videos toward like when Randall really started to struggle. And I remember RJ then started to feel like he was trying to take over the offense and try to take over the team. He at that point he stopped playing defense. Uh, like I think he might have had like at that point he probably had like a couple of games where he played good defense. I remember the Utah Jazz game. He played good defense in Mitchell. I think he maybe had one more game that he played pretty solid defense, and then that was it. He stopped playing defense. He felt like it's almost like, oh well, you can tell he had that attitude. Well, like because he's the one who's running the offense, he doesn't have to play defense, and you can see where he will kind of pick and choose where he will play defense, like in the fourth quarter when they're kind of making a run. And if it's one on one, then he'll try to like do his best. But what they don't realize is like you don't have to worry about like playing perfect defense or trying to have the you don't have to worry about trying to shut down Kevin Durant like in one shot. If you just played freaking the whole game, if you just played defense the whole game, you would not have to worry about that one possession towards the end of the game. And but him and Randall, they just don't play defense. They don't put in the effort. Randall played that. I think was it the Nuggets game where he played defense, and that was it. He's like, so this is the whole season. I think the first two games of the season, he played a little decent defense and then he stopped. And then the Nuggets game, he played good defense and then that's it. That's it. And so we may not see any more defense out of Randall, but that's the problem with that lineup. You can sustain having Jalen Brunson. You can sustain having like let's say a weak point guard and like a weak defensive point guard like Jalen Brunson if everyone else just plays defense. And everyone on that team has the capability to, at least that they're starting right now, have the capability to, but they just don't want to do it. And Jalen Brunson, he's a sieve. I mean, he's terrible. I mean, like I thought he was going to be at least tolerable on a defensive end, but it's just horrendous. I mean, it's just really bad with him. I thought he was going to be able to put up some fight, but he's lost a lot on defense, and it's really it's unfortunate. Like there's not. I don't even feel like there's nothing on this team right now you can hang your head on. I mean, hang your hat on. It's like Derrick Rose is still the best player on this team. Well, aside from Jalen Brunson, Jalen Brunson and Derrick Rose are the two best players on this team, and that's pretty pathetic. That's not a good thing.
Yeah. What do you think? I would not be opposed to moving Derrick Rose into the starting lineup as the two guard. I
You know,
think you would be able to. What do you think about that?
honestly, because of the way he's actually one of the best defenders, and it's kind of crazy to say, but he is one of the best defenders on his team. So I would, if you put him at the two guard, he will compete. So it doesn't. You can play him at point or two guard, and he'll be fine. Um, but yeah, I agree with you. Honestly, there's no reason to be playing. I mean, RJ should not be started. He's not even a starter. I mean, so even like coming off the bench, even like bench players, there's got to be some reason to play for a bench player. Well, the problem with RJ too is like he takes too many shots, right? At least luckily this game he only took 11, which was good. But it's if he's taking 18 shots a game, you know. But yeah, I agree. I think, I wouldn't mind starting Derrick Rose, but the problem is like Derrick Rose, you play him over 25 minutes a game, he's just gonna break down. That's the problem.
Well, no, you're not going to give him. Well, he wouldn't. He can never play starter minutes, right?
Yeah.
That can never happen. But I think just to get a good jump start, that first quarter, getting, somewhere, that I would imagine, 6 or 7 minutes. And then, Tibbs can go to his rotation of Grimes or, Cam is injury prone as well. So I don't even, I don't look forward to seeing him playing a lot of games. The one good thing about Cam is that the fact that he did play and we did put him in that starting lineup, it increased his trade value. But I don't see how the Knicks will be able to sign him. I just don't see it. I think, but that he would add, a nice little dimension for another team, like the Lakers, who wanted to, possibly pick him up before. I think had we not played him right now, his trade value would have been, a second rounder at best. Was all you would have gotten for Cam. I think we can get, a really nice, decent piece back. Now, if
you can actually even get unprotected first, possibly for Cam, the way he's playing right now, because now he's got the reputation is out there now. He's a defensive player, right? At the very least. And then on the offensive end, the floor is like, his percentage, what is his, I got to look up his percentage for the season, but I think his field goal percentage is not bad. I think he's got to be maybe around 44% on the season, maybe. So he's definitely getting his trade value up. And the other thing, watching Cam, is the improvement over time too. He's becoming such a solid NBA player. And it really makes me think about, the one thing I've always known about the NBA is, especially when you have talents like DSJ and people think, oh, DSJ, he sucks and how terrible he is. The reason why a lot of talented players, don't make it is because they just don't have the coaching and they don't have the team to actually invest the time in them. You look at RJ, right. What has RJ even done, even in college, to say he's a corner piece for a friend. RJ, it's all it's been all people, it's what people say about him. He came out of Duke, the coach vouched for him, right? Steve Nash is vouching for him. Everybody was like, oh, he's this great hard worker. He's this, he's that. He's going to be a great player. But then you kind of look at the game and what your eyes is showing you is he's missing layups. He doesn't have a jump shot. He cannot shoot off the dribble. And you're seeing all these things, but we're still investing the time in him. We invest the money in him. But then you see a player like Cam, RJ is one of those players. He has the support system to actually become an all-star, right? Whether he becomes an all-star or not is totally up to RJ. The work he put in and whether or not if it clicks for him. Cam Reddish, he doesn't have the support system. He doesn't have the dad who used to be who was an ex-NBA player or an ex-professional player, doesn't have Steve Nash. He does. Some players like DSJ, Cam Reddish, they don't have that kind of team behind them. And that's the reason why some players are able to improve over time and do really well because they have that support system. But a Cam Reddish, they just don't, And so and you got to realize, like, what were you like when you were 18 years old? I remember when I was freaking 23, you know, I was a basket case, like when you're young, somebody's got to show you how to do it. Even though you're talented, somebody still got to show you how to, get to that next level. And so I think and so it really makes me think like with Cam Reddish is like there's a lot of bad things, there are some flaws about him. In terms of like you can clearly see sometimes he doesn't always put the effort in and he's not focused. But then again, he's like the kid was 18 when he came in the league, and you get him with the right coach and you put the time in, you can actually possibly have a star. But he went to the Hawks. They didn't, they had other priorities and they didn't want to commit to him, and that's what you have. But you kind of look at Cam now. You see his trajectory versus RJ's. It's like he's going up. RJ's like going down. And it's like Cam is a way better defender than RJ. Cam can get to the hole just like RJ can get to the hole. The difference is Cam, when he gets it, he can make layups. RJ cannot. RJ gets to take whatever shots he wants to. Cam, it's like not really. Cam, if he takes another, two bad shots in a row, he's going to sit. RJ's not going to sit. The coach is going to, is not going to say anything about RJ. RJ would have to be total basket case like he was a couple of games ago when he got benched. But that's the problem. That is the problem. I think sometimes we make a mistake and we invest in the wrong person. And we'll kind of have to wait and see what happens. I wanted to ask you about Mitchell Robinson. Did you have anything else you wanted to get in before we just talk about him real quick and his return?
No, we can talk about Mitchell. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so obviously he came back today, 1 of 2 points. He had 4 rebounds, 4 defensive, 1 steal, 2 blocks. It's really weird. Is like the New York Knicks really struggled on the rebounding the ball today. And you can't tell me it's because like Phoenix should not be more physical than his team. And it's not because of Mitchell Robinson. It's not all like the one thing about Mitchell Robinson I've always known, although his rebounding outputs tend to be low, especially defensive rebound, but that's because he's the only player on a team that actually boxes out. He always boxes out. So some other people like Randall or RJ can basically swoop in and get that rebound. But today the Knicks really struggle with it. He seemed a little slow today. So I don't know. Mitchell Robinson is kind of a concern for me because he just didn't really look right out there. He looked like he wasn't very comfortable or even like confident, like physically. I'm not even talking about like in terms of shooting or anything like that. He just didn't seem confident physically. He seemed a little slow. Did you notice anything with him?
Yeah, I thought he was a little slow as well. He's missed the last, was it about 7 games maybe?
Yeah.
Roughly about 7 games or so.
7 or 8.
Yeah, I saw a lot of rust. I saw a lot of rust on him. I was very curious to see how, now that Mitchell is back, what was going to happen, at that center position, as far as, rotation and minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Who was going to be the odd person out, especially if they were going to, put Randall and Obi in at the same time. And I don't think they even did that this game at all, did they?
Actually, I think if they did, it was very brief, but I don't remember them doing it.
I don't think so either. Yeah, I don't recall. I know it didn't happen. I blinked and it occurred, but for the most part, I don't think so. And so I feel like Mitchell has, he has to He worked back into the rotation. I was glad to see him that he didn't start. Um, it's like you don't just think you can get hurt, especially someone who's injury prone. I don't even know if I would even keep him in the starting lineup, to be honest. You just can't trust him, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I would love to see Jericho Sims in that starting lineup. I really would. I think what he brings to the table, yeah, he doesn't have the offensive prowess, as a, uh, Hartstein, but he definitely, he's definitely a rim protector. He hustles, and I think the more playing time he receives, the better he gets. You can't just put him in for 5 minutes a game. It's just not going to work.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I
that
agree with you with Jericho Sims. I think over time he gets better. It's just right now I feel like he's still got a little ways to go. Hartenstein is just not very good, in my opinion, especially on the defensive end. And even on the offense, he's barely a backup, bro. I mean, I think Hartenstein is barely a backup center, even a backup player.
right.
Like it's early on, it was kind of cute and it seemed good, but then it really, so you really start to realize that he struggles protecting the paint. Um, but Sims, I think Sims over time, he does get better, because that's kind of the weird thing with him. He gets better and he learns, which is good. But the problem is, like, in the meantime, you're kind of getting, like, for example, Bismack today, like, really killed him today. Like, he's like, I'm pretty sure he might be stronger than Bismack Biyombo, but you can tell playing. Bismack Biyombo, like, was basically getting his hand on every ball. The New York Knicks could not get a rebound to save their life today. I think we lost a rebound. I think it was like 60-39. We got out rebounded 60-39. That's by over 20. And so I think that's where we sort of, like, since Mitchell Robinson has been injured, that's where we've really struggled rebounding the ball. And that's
Okay.
because there's nobody on this team that actually boxes out. I do think Jericho Sims sort of tries when he can, but he's always out of position. Uh, I just think Mitchell Robinson is just like, you know, there's some players that are just naturally gifted at playing defense. The position is always right. And Mitchell Robinson is just kind of always in the right spot. And like I said, it's like he's the only one on his team that regularly boxes out. And that's the reason why his rebounding numbers don't always look great, because he always makes sure he puts a body on someone and for someone else to scoop in and get to that rebound. But nobody else here on this team really does it. But just to kind of go over the effective field goal from the other teams. So basically, this is when like each Knicks player, and this is basically what everyone that they guarded collected, if this is what they shot. So this is how good their defense, each Knicks player's defense was. So RJ Barrett basically, the effective field goal for the opponent was like 57%. That's just bad, right? Because I think league effective field goal is average is like something like 53 maybe at this point, maybe 54 this early in the season. So you definitely want to be below 53 or 54 for it to be decent, but 57, that's just not good. Julius Randle, not great either. A lot of time with these guys, especially with like a Julius Randle, the thing you got to keep in mind too, with the way they tabulate the stats, like Julius Randle, if he doesn't make an effort and he just decides to leave his man and somebody else picks up his man, that defensive stat doesn't count against him, right? So a lot of times with Julius Randle, that's the one thing I noticed with him, because he's notorious for leaving his man. But then you'll look at his defensive stats, and his defensive stats looks okay. But a lot of times he just doesn't make the effort. And so the stat doesn't count against him. Hartenstein, I mean, he guards the paint. And so for someone guarding the paint, this is way too high. 63% effective field goal percentage is way too high. You want it to be more like around 52, 53%, which is the league average.
Right.
But honestly, as a center, like in truth, because the effective field goal, because everyone is shooting like basically at the rim, right? And so the effective field goal for, and also the field goal for players like Hartenstein, at least on the defensive end, Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson, the effective field goal should equal the opponent field goal. Opponent effective field goal and opponent field goal should be about equal because they're challenging shots at the rim, like basically most of the game. And so, but 63% is way too high. If it was like 53%, you would have been like, okay, that's not bad, right? Because you're constantly challenging shots at the rim. And so, and then, like you should be able to make it about half your shots at the rim, even if you have someone there challenging. Quentin Grimes, 56, that's not very good in my opinion. I know his defense looked pretty good. The one thing with Quentin Grimes, I always saw he's able to move his feet. He gets steals sometimes, but sometimes like the difference between him and Cam Reddish is like just effectiveness. Cam Reddish would basically look lazy and look out of sorts and look unbalanced sometimes. And then you kind of look at the stats at the end of the game, and he held this man to like 40% shooting. And then you will be like, Cam Reddish probably didn't play that great of a defensive game. But you look at the stats, it like when it mattered, it counts because he's able to his man didn't make the shot at the end of the game. Quentin Grimes is like, that's the thing with him is like, he'll play good defense and move his feet, make sure the man doesn't get in the paint. But a lot of times, if the man is taking a shot on him, the chances are they're gonna make the shot because the height just isn't there, right? So next one is Jalen Brunson. We know he's not very good. Mitch, first game back, 41%. That's pretty good. And this is the thing about Mitch. Like he's like the best on the team at this. Challenges shots at the rim. I mean, like it's just there's nobody on this team that controls the paint the way he does. And so 40, especially, and you got to think the thing that makes it even more special with his opponent field goal percentage is the fact that he's challenging shots at the rim. Now, if this was like at 52, 53, you'd be like, okay, that's okay. He's a center, right? And everyone is shooting layups against him. But the fact that he keeps people to 41% shooting at the rim, I mean, that's crazy, That's why Mitchell Robinson is like, they feel the way they feel about him because you just don't see that very often. Derrick Rose, he for some reason, he's just a good defender on the New York Knicks, especially because of Tibbs. I don't know how he does it. Quickly is another one who's a really good defender at the perimeter when he has his, when he got his head on straight. Obi, 45.6 effective that's pretty good because league average is like 52, so 45 is all right. Well, not all right, it's good. Sims, this is okay. Our league average, like I said, is probably like between 52 and 54%, so 51.6 is okay. Miles McBride, this isn't very good, but not much you can say about that. He didn't play a ton of minutes. These guys, I'm not even going to get into these guys because they didn't really play long enough. The one quick thing I am going to say before we kind of get back to talking about the rest of the team was, like 5 minutes ago, Miles McBride is playing, right? And he hit a few shots. And this is the one thing, that just kind of bothers me about this team. So they cut the league down to I think it was like 15 or something like that. And then this garbage time unit, right? That's who was in at this point. Instead of getting the ball to Miles McBride, I can't remember who I think they got the ball quickly and quickly took the shot. I don't know. Actually, I don't think all the garbage team was in yet. But it was just like, this is the problem with this team. It's almost like, so nobody can hit a basket, right? McBride is making shots and you're trying to cut into the league, but then you start keeping the ball away from McBride. And it just and so he went from he was the only person who was scoring. And then the Knicks went from I think 4 minutes and some change all the way to 2 minutes without scoring. And, then they brought all the garbage team in, it's just the low IQ on this team is just is mind boggling, right? So you have the guys making shots and yes, you're probably not going to win the ball game, but there's 4 minutes left or whatever at that point, you should at least make an effort because he's making shots, right? Get him the ball and see what happens. But they don't do that. And it was just But yeah, that's but I didn't want to go off tangent there, but this is basically the defensive stats for the whole team, how they all perform. And that's one of the big problems with this team right now. They're just not very good on the defensive end, and there's nobody who's really playing consistent good defense. Mitch just came back, so he didn't play long enough to really. And even though he didn't look great, he was kind of slow. I mean, he was still pretty effective, but just not enough to really help the team in a meaningful way. But that's just the biggest problem with this whole team is just defense overall and being able to play consistently. Uh, did you see anybody like on the defensive end that that kind of like up to you?
Um, the only person I, I think it's probably quickly. And I think quickly it's just effort. I think quickly was playing this defense before, but he was so small, he was just bouncing off guys,
Yeah.
So he would try, and they just like he's like a little gnat. They're like, get out of here, you know. But he's put on a little bit of weight, some solid muscle. He's not like a bodybuilder or anything, but he's definitely stronger than he was when he initially came into the league. So I think that's why he's not getting, as blown off the blocks like he, were in the previous years. We still don't have, that elite defender. I mean, the closest thing we have, I guess, would probably be, Mitch, and that's from a shot blocking perspective. But if you think about it, Mitch isn't, he isn't blocking as many shots as he did initially in the league, but he's not fouling out as many games either. So, remember at one time, Mitch Robinson was the best shot blocker on the 3-point line.
Yep.
I just think that, we have a lot of work. We just have a lot of work, and I just wonder, having a new voice, would that make a difference? And I know, of course, every loss we always think about the trades or the acquisitions we didn't have. But, you think about Cleveland. Cleveland's not doing well right now, with Donovan Mitchell. They're not blowing people out of the water right now. So, if anyone who's won that trade, if you ask me, Danny Ainge has done it again.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Danny Ainge has done it again.
Yeah, he definitely got them. He definitely got them. But Cleveland had the pieces. Like honestly, the pieces, the players they gave away, Cleveland had been trying to trade them for a while anyway. But I do think they overpaid in terms of draft picks. But Cleveland been trying to get rid of Sexton and marketing for over a year. So I think that's why it's like they just have the better package than the Knicks, because they happen to have players that they want anymore, right? And right now, I think that's one of the big problems with the New York Knicks too, even with that trade, because number one, like last year, right? They didn't basically give RJ basically sort of give him the keys early enough in the season. No, let me scratch that. That's not true, because RJ was taking a ton of shots early in the season as well. I just think we were making a lot of excuses for RJ last year. But I think we knew what we had with RJ, and we just didn't really want to see it. And so, and I'm not saying he can't improve, but right now, RJ is what he is. RJ is a sub 40% shooter if you're going to have him be the one taking most of the shots or even playmaking. And it looks like it's going to be even worse if you have him off the ball, right? Because he doesn't have any confidence in making shots. But Cleveland did have the package that we did, one. And then number two is just the fact that we didn't even know what we had. We didn't know, do we even know what Obi is really? RJ, I think we know what RJ is, but we're in denial. Utah would not have wanted Julius. So I think they should have forced the issue with Julius to try to trade him, but whatever. But
he didn't have any value. It's so ironic. I've never seen a guy in the league who's not injury prone, who averages 20 points and 9 or 10 rebounds a game and 4 or 5 assists, that you would have to attach a first round pick to get rid of.
Because the efficiency is so bad.
Yeah. And so, but, it's like, okay, well, if he starts to me as he went on this little run and he was playing really hard, a couple of games on the road, to me, that's where you want him. That's where you want to be able to, now you can trade him because he's not going to sustain it, right? So if he's not going to sustain it, you got to trade him at his highest value, and so that's kind of where we're at. And I was hoping that he would have a good game against Phoenix because he was linked to the Phoenix Suns at one time.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I'm sure they watched this game and said, "Yeah, I think we dodged another bullet with this guy."
Yeah.
I don't
Honestly,
know.
maybe like they would consider it like because things aren't going well with DeAndre Ayton anyway. Like I know and I wouldn't be. I'm not. Honestly, I'm not upset with DeAndre Ayton, especially the way the coach played him. Like towards the end, towards the end of that playoff run, what the coach did to him, like calling him out like that in public, and then the way the team played him. But I think that's a good trade partner. They should like consider it. Like honestly, to tell you the truth, it sounds this would have been better if we would have picked up Jalen Duren. But I will consider trading. Like at this point, I would consider trading Julius and Mitch for DeAndre Ayton. You know, I would do that.
That
But
would be a good trade. That would be fair value, I think.
Yeah, and even if you would have to attach, like, let's say a couple of protected first round picks, let them do that. To get it done. Uh, People don't want to admit it, but the weight Mitchell Robinson put on was really bad for him. I think it's just like he's still way too heavy. I really think, there's no way you're going to tell me that, like, oh, you put on weight, but it's better for you, although you lost all of your reflex.
Right.
You're not going to, I mean, like the dude right now is getting shot blocked by like guards sometimes. It's like, that's just, that's crazy. The old Mitch Robinson, that was not happening to like year one and year two Mitch. So I just think that was a really bad idea. All the weight that they had, he bulked up on. He should have really watched what he was eating. And I think it's not all on the team. I think it's mostly his fault because the one thing I don't think Mitch always really listens, especially in the offseason. He just does what he wants to do, I think. He's one of the few players, although he was pretty young, he's like, he just seems like a grown man, right? And so I'm not saying he's a bad kid. I think he's one of the more solid guys on the team. But he does do what he wants to do and what he thinks is right. But I do think he put on too much weight. And I think it's I still think he's gonna be like he's still one of the best defenders in the league. And, he's still a great rim protector. But I just think, he would have been better off just, like you just want to lift weights. You don't want to just put on weight because you want to bulk up. Just lift weights and, and if you get heavy, if you bulk up, you bulk up. But don't do it by eating, But I would do that trade. I would do that trade in a heartbeat. Because well, I shouldn't say in a heartbeat because honestly, I would do it because you're getting back DeAndre Ayton on the other side. DeAndre Ayton is a decent defender. He's not bad. And then you'll have Jericho Sims coming off the bench.
Okay.
So, it's just they're in a pretty bad spot right now because it doesn't look like there's anyone on this team. The ceiling for this team is really low, and is getting to the point where whether if it's because it doesn't matter whose fault it is, whether if it's the coach's fault or GM's fault, this is where you're at. And it's starting to really look like all these players, their ceiling is not very high, and so that's just a problem. And so either you switch up a coach, switch the coach to see what they look like under a different coach that make decisions. But at some point, they got to make a decision really quickly. honestly, I don't know if they want to stay intact until trade deadline, because the problem is you want to make sure you're making the right decisions, like in terms of like if you want to start tanking. And honestly, I think with the whole Thibodeau thing, they may want to do it soon because you want to see what you have by trade deadline, right? So if you want to see what you have and figure out who you want to get rid of, you may want to try to see like what they look like, what these players look like, either on the under Bryant or even like Ime Udoka, if you want to like hopefully, hopefully they don't get religion and decide not to hire him. It's like if he's out there, you better go get that dude. But like yeah, I just think they should make that move quickly. Although, like, it's not all tips. I think it's just, these players are balling out. I think problem. And RJ, he's a problem. So it's, and I've never talked this way about RJ before, but at some point, I've been kind of sounding the alarm bells because of his inefficiencies and his free throws. And now I'm at this point where, like, I'm hitting the button because it's, I just don't know at this point. So I think those are the problems.
Yeah, we got a lot of problems. We have a lot
Yeah.
of problems, you know, and this road trip. I mean, this was awful for RJ. I mean, it was just awful. I don't. I can't think of any game off the top of my head where I'm like, what? Okay, RJ may be turning the corner and getting back. He's just getting worse, like progressively getting worse. And so I just feel like, we're getting to the front office, trading Derrick Rose is like, okay, what is that going to do?
Yeah.
Is that, it keeps talking about this log jam. Where is the log jam at? Tips, there's no log jam.
There's no log jam anywhere. We don't have any players. We don't have talented players to say there's a log jam. It's like it's
right. Where's the log jam at where, you know, somebody's not getting enough minutes outside of Obi, you know? And right now, his last two games, which I'm really surprised because he typically doesn't have these terrible back-to-back games. I don't know,
yeah, with him. With Obi, I think, part of the problem is like when he started playing that small ball lineup with Julius, the problem with that first team, they're selfish. Like if he's playing with anybody in that first line, like him and RJ, I used to think him and RJ would be great tandem. RJ plays such selfish basketball. And so if he's in the lineup with RJ, Julius, and Jalen, it's like I said, only three of them are touching the ball. They're not even trying to like let anyone else get a shot. If anyone else touches the ball and that person makes the right basketball play by passing it to one of them, forget it. So it's, and a lot of it goes on Obi too. Obi, like I said, you can't just like, if they're trying to make you a 3-point shooter, and that's not what you're not a 3-point shooter. Sometimes you got to have the cojones to be like, screw what the coach says. I'm just going to put the ball on the floor and go at this basket. It's like, you can't like, it just, and I think that's part of what's going on. And the other part of it too, I think, is also just being confident. He's just not confident. But that's part of being a good NBA player. If you're not confident, then you're not going to be an NBA player. At least you're not going to be a decent one. So it's on him as well. I agree with you. It's like I've never seen it, but I think part of it is just like the way they've changed like his the rotation and the way they're playing him a little more now. But he can't fall in love with just 3-point shots and just that's all he's doing. That's just he's playing bad basketball, just like the rest of them are playing bad basketball.
No, I agree. No, I agree. Or you can be too confident like RJ and not and don't stop shooting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. But so what I have here, I looked up that stat you wanted where it was like the Knicks, their performance with and without Mitchell Robinson. I got .com, and so I just kind of split it up. So I think they went from game 1 to game 8 with Mitch. Mitch got hurt during that Philly game, And I think that's when he went down. He played on like I don't even think he played more than 10 minutes that game, or maybe it was 14 minutes. Maybe he played something like that. But they were a better team with Mitchell Robinson than without, like especially on the defensive end. Even interestingly, I guess they were slightly better on the offensive end. Uh, Efficiency wise, they were more efficient with Mitchell Robinson on the floor as a team. Um, so it's like, so we'll go through it step by. So as a team, like, they average with Mitch, they average 114 points and they allow 113.8. And so you need that spread. You need some kind of positive spread. When it's even, the chances are you're going to be a 500 ball club. But when it's slightly above, I think the chances are they were going to be a 500 ball club at 114 and then at 113.8. So they allowed opponents to score 113.8 points per game. But at least they were scoring slightly more points than the opponent, but just not enough for them to be meaningfully over 500. And then I didn't, so without Mitchell Robinson, they basically, we won 3 without him. However, it was because we had those 2 games. This doesn't even include the Warriors game. So we're really 400 without. But like, if you look at the offense, it was slightly better without him at 114.71. But the defense got, drastically worse. We were allowing 117.5 points per game without Mitch. And if you look at the field goal percent, we were a little more efficient with Mitch. We shot 43% when he's on the lineup, and we're shooting like basically 40.1 or 41% without him. And that makes sense. Honestly, basketball, although Mitchell Robinson doesn't go out and get his own buckets, and that's what I've always said about Mitch and Obi. They don't have to go out and get their own buckets per se, but if you have efficient, high efficient finishers, you need to get them the ball where they know how to finish, whether if it's like, them flying through the air and dunking the ball, or if it's an open shot, 3-pointer, you got to get them the ball. And that's the reason why this is such a low IQ team. And the coach, I think, he's not looking very smart on the offensive end, because that's what you do. If you have, if you have efficient ball players, you get them the ball where they basically finish, where they finish the most. And you see that without Mitchell Robinson, they're just on the floor when he's not there, because that's another option, right? That's when they talk about pressure on the rim, that's another easy way for them to score. As long as you get somebody going downhill and you get that person, Mitch's man, to sort of commit, they just lob it up to Mitch. And so it just makes them a better basketball team, I made a mistake. That was the 43 and the 50. That was like field goals made. The field goal percentage was 50% with Mitch, and we were 45% without Mitch. So I'm sorry about that. So that was a mistake. And so in terms of 3-point shooting, we were worse without Mitch, but that he doesn't shoot threes. Rebounding, we were our worst rebounding team without Mitch, and so that's another place where it really matters, being able to close out the possession. And I think we all kind of notice it. The team has really struggled rebounding the ball when Mitch hasn't been in the lineup. And so we basically, with him, we averaged 50 rebounds a game. Without him, we only averaged 42 and a half rebounds per game.
So with Mitch's offensive rebound, prowess, I would imagine that's giving us more shots per game.
That is correct. That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. When you have Mitch on the floor, you're getting on average on average, you're getting 2 more shots. He's giving you 2 extra shots per game.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So, and probably 2 extra made field goals per game too, because a lot of times it comes as putback. He normally takes it back up himself usually. And so that's pretty much it. It looks like, obviously there's more blocks when he's on the floor. We actually have more blocks. We double up on the blocks, but it looks like when he's not on the floor, we have more steals, but So I guess maybe that's a little bit of a wash. I'm not sure how to think about that. And then if you look at the defensive rating, um, it's 110.8 with Mitch, and we're 117.5759 without Mitch. And so that lines up to basically the amount of points that we're letting teams score when Mitch is not on the floor. So we're pretty much a worse team without Mitch when he's not on the floor. Not better, we're definitely worse without Mitch. And that's just the problem. You can kind of see it, you really see it on the defensive end. I would really like to see him if Reddish can come back healthy and Mitch can get fully healthy. It'll be nice to see both of them together as starters on the floor, because the one thing I noticed about Reddish, he's starting to really become more aggressive on the defensive end. He's also covering, he's almost like he's playing a lot of free safety too, right? So not only is he covering his man a lot of times, I feel like I see him like trying to cover up mistakes for other people. So he's playing like really good team defense. It'd be really interesting to see what happens when you have both of them healthy, playing defense, at a high level when they're like they're capable of. So I think that's going to be interesting to see. Is there anything you noticed about these stats? Any questions you have about it, or like anything you wanted to add to it?
No, they're good stats. It's good though. I mean, because with the eye test, you kind of feel that they are, definitely better with him. But it's always good to see the numbers. It's always good to see, when you can hone in and conduct that deeper dive to see exactly, Mitch's impact.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, I'm curious, that's his impact. And then how many minutes does it say the minutes to?
The number of minutes he averages per game.
Yeah.
I don't have it here, but I think it was he averages around 22 minutes a game or 23. It's not very many because he's been, even when he's been healthy, he's been in a lot of foul trouble recently, this year. He was in a lot of foul trouble this year. And so Hartenstein was averaging more throughout the course of these 15 games that I analyzed. Hartenstein was averaging more minutes than he was. Even the first 8 games, I think Hartenstein was averaging a little more minutes, averaging maybe 1 or 2 more minutes than Mitch was. And that was because Mitch was getting into a lot of foul trouble this year. But it's drastically different. Even if you look at the field goal allowed in the paint, Hartenstein was still pretty good because he had a lot of good games earlier in the season, pretty decent games. But he's really fallen off after game 10 or 11. But even up until game 13, he was allowing a little less than 40% shooting at the Hartenstein and at the rim, and that's really good. And Mitch was around the same, I think Mitch was around 38%, or 38.5, something like that. So both of them were doing really good job at the rim earlier in the season, but Hartenstein really fallen way off recently. He's really been struggling, protecting the rim. But there's just nobody on this team that's even remotely as good. The only other person is honestly, in terms of effectiveness, is just Cam Reddish. And honestly, the way they're playing right now, it really should be there are 3 people that should be getting strong rotation minutes. I do think they should, if they're not going to play Fournier, then you got to heavily consider playing Grimes a lot more. You can't diminish Reddish's minutes because you need defense, and obviously Mitch. It'll be good to see 3 of them on the floor. I have a feeling 3 of them on the floor, we're going to have a lot more of an effective team defense if you have 3 of them on the floor at the same time. And then the coach can do whatever he wants with you. Obviously, you got Brunson, he needs to start. And of course, you got Julius. Coach is not going to send him on the bench. But I think they need to consider those 3. They need to scale back RJ's minutes. I'm sorry. They need to just play him. If he's not going to play defense and he's playing terrible on offense, give him 25 minutes a game. That's good enough for him to sort himself out. If he's going to sort himself out, 25 minutes a game is more than good enough to do that. And let him figure it out. And then If he looks like he's ready to get his head out of wherever it's at, then you can increase his minutes, especially on the defensive end. But if they wanted to try to win ball games, I think they need to consider just getting a heavier dose of Grimes, Reddish, and Mitchell Robinson at the same time.
Only if we can think of those two out of I was going to say 2 out of those 3 you named. It's hard to get them to stay healthy.
That is true. That is definitely true. I agree with you on that. Actually, all 3 of them. It's hard to get them to stay healthy. It seems like.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, absolutely. So it's yeah. I mean, I would love to get 10 games where we have everyone healthy, and just see, what we have, because I mean, we're constantly, changing out this lineup. It's hard to build true continuity, where exactly where a player wants the ball, where he's effective at. And I just think, like, even with somebody struggling, that's, where Jalen Brunson has to come in and be able to get these guys easy passes to get them going. If a guy scores 2 easy layups, he will tend to play hell of a defense when he gets back. After he finishes scoring, you're one of the first people to run back. They want to shake everyone's hand and they're ready to play defense. So you got to get people involved, but we keep playing this selfish, ISO basketball, with RJ and Julius, with all these ISOs. We're going to constantly get these typical outcomes. And so I think that's one of those big things that needs to be really, really discussed with the coaching staff. I would love to be a fly on the wall to hear what Tibbs says in these meetings, and who he's truly holding accountable. Because we know who he's not holding accountable. We know what 2 people he's not, And so I'm just curious. I really am.
Yeah. Tim doesn't listen to anyone. I don't think he listens to his staff at all, because there's no way, like, with some of the decisions they make, it just kind of makes me think he definitely doesn't listen to anyone on that staff very much. And the other thing on the offensive end too is, like, it's part of Tibbs' fault too. Is, like, I've never seen so much, like, they just waste pick and rolls. They do a pick and roll just so they can isolate Randall on a smaller player, just so Randall can turn around and turn over the ball. Same thing with RJ. And it's just like, I just don't even get why they use a pick and roll. Like, early in the season, they would use a pick and roll with Randall, make sure, and I think they were trying to get a point of, like, having Randall just go downhill and go to the basket, right? Which he should be doing. And then they did that earlier. It was working. And then as confidence, they decided, oh, yeah, well, he doesn't have to, take the free run at the rim anymore off the pick and roll. Let's slow it down and let him isolate. And so then the defense can double or triple on him so he can turn over the ball. And so it's just like, same thing with RJ. It's like they do the same thing. They'll do a pick and roll RJ, but so RJ can get a smaller player. And so he can turn over a ball or break a layup. And it's just like, instead of running a pick and roll with either Obi, if you're gonna run a pick and roll with Randall, you got to make him go to the rim, either go to the rim or pass the ball away. Don't let him isolate, and they just keep doing the same thing. But yeah, it's just mind-boggling what these players are doing. The selfish brand of basketball they're playing is just mind-boggling. They're not good enough to do it. There's nobody here who's a 50% shooter who's averaging like 25 points a game. The way we're playing, funny enough, Jalen Brunson, the way we're playing, especially because of their confidence, like, it looks like RJ and Randall's confidence might be waning. Like, Jalen Brunson is going to end up averaging probably like 25 points a game on like 50% shooting,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I would not be surprised. I mean, Jalen Brunson, and that's typically, if I would look at the stats, this would be a good stat to maybe to pull for us for another time, like the Jalen Brunson stat. How effective when Jalen Brunson is having a bad game, how does that affect the rest of the team? um, because we don't win a game unless he plays well. You know,
Yeah.
I would love, again, this is just my eye test. I can't point my finger and say, yeah, but I would love to see statistically, even with Jalen Brunson, um, you know, and his impact, you know, offensive and defense. But we know he's a liability on defense, but just his impact on offense. And we knew this. When we signed Jalen Brunson, we knew he was a liability on defense. So this is not anything new, right? And that was the big fear of bringing Donovan Mitchell and having a Jalen Brunson backcourt, is that who's going to guard, you know, those teams' best 1 and 2 players? You know, you
Yeah.
have, you know, Donovan Mitchell would have been an elite offensive player, but, you know, who would you have given the keys to? RJ? You know, to be able to guard that team's best player. So, yeah, it's kind of tough. You know, you really need somebody, you know, at that 2-guard spot who can play elite defense, you know, and can hit an open jump shot. That's all we really need. We don't even need a playmaker. We just need somebody who can hit the open jump shot and it can play at an elite level on defense.
Yeah, you know, I definitely agree with you, man. And it's crazy. You kind of look at Grimes today. Grimes, in a lot of ways, his play style in a lot of ways sort of reminds me of Bobby a little bit, in the sense where it's very crisp. There's not too many wasted dribbles. Um, he's either attacking, like he'll attack and pass and make a play. He just makes very quick decisions, right? So, and that's the thing I like about him. And honestly, he's starting to make a case, like, you know, I mean, you don't want to do it off. He's only played one game, but man, it's like sometimes I always think like, how come RJ can't play like that? How can he can't? Like, I wish he would just play faster, make quicker decisions. It's like only Grimes or Obi are the only players on our team that does that. And also, also, of course, Derrick Rose also plays like that. You know, makes very quick decisions and stuff like that. You just at least, but Derrick Rose is only playing like 15 minutes a game, and that we just need more players that are playing starter minutes, that are making good, quick decisions, and that we get. Or it's just crazy. They don't move the ball either. So but yeah, it's like it does feel like if it wasn't for the whole output issue for Grimes, which you want to see more of, but he kind of, for me, he makes the case like, you know, Grimes looks like a starting 2-guard to me a little bit, you know, if he can get his point production up to like 14 points a game, at least around, you know, and maintain like 46% from the field. But you kind of have to wait and see that. But he does look pretty good but that's like a possible option. If RJ can get his head straight, maybe, but I don't know. I don't know if RJ can get it together. Because he's had 4 years, and 4 years he's been in the NBA. He hasn't been able to make playoffs. I mean, what does that tell you? I mean, you can't say like, I'm not gonna then all of a sudden say like, oh yeah, he's gonna be this great finisher at the rim. They change it around, but we've got 4 years of data on RJ, and it says the same thing year after year. So
yeah, and he's not a good jump shooter. So he's not consistent on the jump shot. So he doesn't finish around the rim well, and he doesn't shoot the jump shot well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, well,
does he
what
do
does
well,
he do
right?
well, right?
You would think he would basically like, okay, maybe I should like, because he can get to the rim and he can collapse the defense. You would think like, okay, let me try to, you know, make plays for others and just kind of see if I can get my assist up that way. But he doesn't even like, it's crazy. He doesn't even do that. He just kind of like puts his head down and just keeps trying. And he's got 3 men on him. And he throws up these weak shots. You saw the shot he threw up today against Biombo, and Biombo just like Biombo didn't really have to jump to throw that shot away.
Yeah, he
And
got
it's
a couple
like
of his shots blocked.
he gets a
He got
shot
quite a
blocked
few
like
shots
twice
blocked.
every game.
Yeah,
It's like unbelievable. Like, what are you doing? But yeah,
exactly.
It's unbelievable.
Exactly. Yeah. And and so we have a back-to-back tomorrow against
This is OKC again.
OKC. So I'm curious to see how we play OKC again. And then we're off until Friday. The Knicks are back home against the Trailblazers. So I think this time off will be good for the team. I'm curious, will they, have any meetings, or I would imagine probably not. After the game, they'll probably fly back probably that night just so they can be able to have that Tuesday and Wednesday and go wherever they're going to go for the holidays since they're not playing.
Nice. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so I would imagine, they're probably not going to get any practice in, I would imagine, unless it happens on Tuesday. But, I'm sure that the guys will be flying out to, their respective homes. Now, to me, if it was me, I think they should stay in the city. They should all break bread together, bring their families together, just for some camaraderie. But who knows?
Yeah, honestly, I thought Julius Randle was going to take a step back and not be the leader of this team anymore. The problem with this team, the biggest problem is Julius Randle is your leader. And, even like that meeting he called and supposedly, and, they should have just kept that on the wraps. Like, the way they made it seem like, it was the reason why they won a couple of those games. You should just keep it on the wraps. Those things on the wraps until the season is over. Because now it's like, what if you start continue losing? Then they're gonna be like, well, it's like, I guess that meeting didn't work, right? And so, but the problem is like what you see with Julius Randle, he can basically he'll call a meeting and be like, all right, look, I'm looked at myself in the mirror. Okay, I promised to do this, that, and the other. And I need you guys all to hold each other and hold me accountable too and do this, that, and the other. He'll play good 1-2 games. And then he'll turn back to the old Julius. Just like this season, he played decent the first 2 games, and he was playing decent defense the first 2 games of the season. And then once he got his confidence up, he thought he didn't have to play defense anymore, And then the other, so that's a big problem with Julius, it's like, and with this team because he's like the leader, and it's like, and I really thought that Jalen was going to take over as the leader, as the solo leader of this team. But it doesn't look like that's the case. And then the other thing I just wanted to say real quick when you were talking about, I didn't realize they have that long of a layoff. If they're going to make a change early in the season, Tibbs better be careful, because it seems like this is like the perfect time to make change at the coaching position when you have a nice long layoff, because you could get, if you already kind of have a plan who you want to go to next, you can make that change and give that coach time to have the meetings with the team and kind of start implementing his plan, during this time. And they can just, so it's going to be interesting, very interesting to see how this shakes out. But yeah, once you said they had that long layoff, it kind of made me think if a change is going to be made, it's going to be like, these are usually the perfect time to make the change.
No, I agree. I think it's too early.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too early. It's too early to fire the coach. I mean, they're what are they now? Probably 2 games below 500 or so.
Actually, no, they're only 1 game below 500 right now. Only 1 game below.
Yeah, you don't fire a coach that early. So he'll be able to eat turkey and rest assured he's not getting fired that week. Now, when we get close to the All-Star break, I don't see them pulling the trigger on Tibbs till after. I think when we are mathematically out of the playoffs, that's when it's going to happen.
Yeah. The problem with that is, like I remember we talked about it a little earlier. If they don't make the playoffs this season, then you had 2 bad seasons in a row. People are thinking I can understand people thinking oh, front office will get a chance to get the second hire. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think they think the longer they wait, the more time they buy themselves. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, and it's because sometimes it's not really just about like the current performance, right? It's not even just looking at like, okay, yeah, the team is 500 or a little below 500. But I think it's more about like the future of the team. Where is it going? What does it look like? Is there like, is there kind of like, do you see them taking the next step under the same regime, right? Because if you think about it, it's like this regime basically have them stuck at 500 basketball for the foreseeable future, right? And now you're realizing like, well, these players that we have now, RJ is not looking very good and may not be that, may just be, uh, you hope he becomes like even a halfway decent basketball player. Starter. Obi Toppin doesn't even look like he should, he doesn't look like a starter either this year. And then you just kind of start to look at basically where your team is at, and it just doesn't look good. And that's what basically makes the owner look basically, that's when you get like wholesale changes, right? When you kind of see like, okay, you know what, this team doesn't look. I don't think these guys are going to be able to get me there, especially if they're kind of standing pack with what they're and like for example they're standing pack with tips, right? And so I don't know. I just think that's why I think the you wait is actually the less room you leave yourself as a front office. But the quicker you move, I think, in my opinion, the more decisions you can make. I think you can know whether one thing I do know, Tibbs is not going to get them to the finals. I think pretty much everybody knows that. So if you know Tibbs it's not the long term answer, then it's like, and then on top of that, because of Tibbs, there's a ton of other questions you're not able to answer, and those questions are about your players. Then you're like, it feels like you may have to make that change sooner than later, because if you wait till the trade deadline and you still don't know what you really have, then it's like how are you going to trade those players, right? Like, do you need to? You got Cam. Like the one good thing, Cam Reddish actually, Cam Reddish tips have been good for Cam Reddish. So, and like if he keeps playing this way, if he can come back soon and keeps playing, then may get a first round pick from trading Cam Reddish would be good, which would be good. But then on the flip side, it's like you trade Cam Reddish and he goes and balls out somewhere else, and you're stuck with RJ Barrett, who's shooting 30% from the field. What does that make you look like? You still might get fired. It's like, so it's just not looking very good. That's why sometimes I think sometimes like a quicker, that's why I felt like last year they should have gotten rid of Tibbs, because you need to make those decisions quicker. You need to really, there's a lot of things you need to know. And Tibbs may not be able to, allow you to kind of make those decisions because of what he wants to do. So, but yeah, I mean, but you're right. It's better to stand pat. Like it's a better, well run organization if you don't, fire your coach like 18 games into the season.
Right. Right. I just don't want us to make a trade just to be making a trade.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like make a trade because we upgraded. Make us a trade where we're getting excited about.
Mhm.
And just the potential of a player. Right now, I just don't think that. I don't know who's even out there that who would make that difference. I mean, we need a bona fide. I swear, I really believe that the player we missed out on was what's his name in Atlanta?
The Hawks. Yeah, I agree.
That was our guy. That was
Yeah.
our guy who plays elite defense. He does what he needs to do on offense, and he is just under the radar. We need that guy. We need SGA. We need these people SGA is not under the radar anymore, but those are the type of guys that we need. We're going to make a trade. Let's go after them. This makes
That'd
no
be
sense for
nice.
stocking these draft picks and not making an impactful trade.
I agree, man. I definitely agree. You know what was crazy back in the day when we picked up Knox? I remember I was thinking because I really like because we needed a guard, one guard too, and I really wanted Shea Gillius Alexander, and I remember thinking like the next Knicks should just like I felt like that draft was deep, but it's not really as deep as I thought it was. But there was a lot of players I did like, and I was thinking they should trade back to like I think it was with the Clippers. One of them had 2 picks, and I was like the Knicks should find a way to trade down with the Clippers, and so they can pick Shea Gillis and Alexander, and then and then take a risk on Michael Porter Jr. Um, and honestly, I don't really like Michael Porter Jr. To tell you the truth, I don't like the way he plays. His defense sucks ass, but um, but yeah, it's like that was. I remember I wanted the Knicks to do that, but it didn't matter. I like the Knox pick too. I thought he was talented, but boy, was I wrong. It's anyway. That's neither
I
here
was
nor
shooting for
there.
Knox too. You weren't in that Knox boat alone. I was
Yeah,
a big fan of Kevin Knox coming out of college. I knew that his coach said he would be a project, but I had no idea it would be like this.
yeah. Remember when he dunked on Ben Simmons? It's like he would just show
Oh
you
yeah,
stuff once in a blue. I was like, oh, it's like when he dunked on Ben, that was like a nasty one right there. It was like I mean, the kid has some, he had the talent, but it's just like, you know what? He just had the wrong coach. Like he's another one of those players. Like, look, I mean, the players do need to have some kind of ambition too, right? If they're just a basket case, they don't want to do anything. But sometimes, I feel like like I said, these are 18-year-olds. They'll do what you tell them to do. People think like, um, these ain't like the 18-year-olds like back in the day in the 80s, coming up out of Newark, New Jersey. I mean, like these kids are going to like, they get scooped up in grade school and they get sent to private schools, even the ones that come from the hood, so they're not the same kinds of like, I'm not saying hood kids don't listen either, but they're not the same kind of like knuckleheads that are coming out of like, that are coming that are coming out of high school back in the day, like in the 80s and 90s.
right,
These are
right,
way different with
exactly.
these kids. They're very polished. These are very polished kids. They grew up in manicured environments, and so they're gonna listen a lot of times. I think they're gonna be more likely to listen to you. And so it just always surprises me that it's always the organization. For me, I think mostly is the organization. And so I think it was with Knox. I mean, yes, it's two-sided, but I think the organization, it was the wrong organization as well.
Yeah, the
Um,
organization definitely failed Knox.
yeah,
Absolutely. I think
yeah,
we should have gotten Kenny Payne as our not no, I'm sorry, not Kenny Payne, Kenny Atkins.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Now Kenny Atkins, will we win a lot of games because of Kenny Atkins? I don't know. But I do think we would see he would maximize the talent that we have on that roster. And
yeah.
that's what you need. And we
I,
don't have.
I agree. I definitely agree. With Knox, it was like they just did him dirty, man. It was like, I mean, he did himself dirty by playing video games all the time, but like Fizdale basically treated him like like the heir apparent, the prince, and his rookie year got all the minutes he can ask for. Second year, he couldn't get his butt off the bench. It was crazy.
Mhm.
Fizdale was like coaching for his life. That's another one of those things where it was like, and that's where it was bad for Knox, right? It's bad for your young players. You could tell Fizdale was the wrong hire 5 games into the season. Like, and that's all it took. And that it sounds crazy, but that's all you needed to see. 5 games into the season,
Yeah.
you could tell Fizdale, like,
Yeah. He wanted
the
to be
thing.
their best friend. That was the problem. He thought through relationships that he would be able to win games. And,
Yes.
and all you saw at the end of the games was him sweating. You always, we're going to watch the film and we're going to get better. We're just going to look at the film, right? And so
But the thing with Fizdale, like I always, I couldn't stand was he used to like, I've never seen someone talk defense up so much in my life. And then like, what would happen when it actually comes down to like playing players?
Yeah.
He wouldn't have like nobody in a certain lineup were defensive players. I remember like he wouldn't even play Dotson. He'll barely play Dotson. He'll barely play Ntilikina. Like he would just like, and the one thing you quickly realized with Fizdale was like he would rather lose pretty than fight ugly, you know?
Right. Right.
And so, yeah, you're not going to win very much ball games with Ntilikina and Dotson, but you are actually going to be in a little more games, right? You're going to fight a little more. But he was like his lineups were just like, and 5 games into it, I was like, okay, this guy just like he's saying one thing to the media, and then he's doing the total opposite. For me, that was like, and for me that was a fire on the fence. Like, that was a clear sign. Like this dude is crazy. Like you can't just be saying one thing in the interviews, in the conferences, in the medias, and then like during the games you're doing the opposite thing. It's just like it was crazy. But they shouldn't have brought him back for year two. They, because they should have fired him like early on, honestly, in year one, and it would have looked crazy, but it was just a terrible hire, and it sucked for Knox because when he came back, now Fizdale was coach for his life year two, and of course he wasn't trying to play Knox anymore, and then it was like, well, there goes your first round pick, and so that was that, but all right, so this is this ran obviously a little long, so I guess we can just cut it here. You got anything else you want to say? You get the last word on these New York Knicks. What do you think happens tomorrow against OKC?
Yeah. Yeah. My last word is, yeah, I want to see, because we know what we're going up against. They've already played this team, and now you're playing them for the second time. What are you going to do different? What's going to be the different angle? So I'm looking at from a coaching standpoint. I'm looking at from a player standpoint. And so I want to see if we're going to end this road trip the right way. And, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But I'm watching. I'm definitely watching. And I'm putting some people on notice. But I'm watching.
Yeah, well, there you have it, folks. Civil and Dre talking Knicks. Please make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you guys again soon. Thank you. Have a good night.
Right.